So, hi Facebook. So we're going to be talking about how to win the sugar war tonight. So we all are here because we probably suffer from some sort of sugar addiction, which most of us do, so don't be ashamed to admit that. I'm a post-sugar addict myself, and it's just something that we deal with, especially in the standard American diet. So, no shame here tonight. I don't want you guys to feel like I'm shaming you or anything like that. We're just giving you opinions on what sugar does to the body and how it can be harmful in the long run. Alright? So, first I'm going to come over here and draw a little triangle. So, if you've been to a seminar before, this is our go-to, kind of puts things into context. I'll say what these words are because my marker's kind of running out here. Okay, so at the top we have sugar, so that's the main topic tonight. Then in this bottom left corner we have nutritional deficiencies, and then we have organ dysfunction. So this triangle is important because if one corner of the triangle moves, the other two change as well. So we have sugar being the thing that we're eating and putting in our bodies, which then causes nutritional deficiencies, which then causes the organ dysfunction. So our organs don't just dysfunction because they think it's fun and a good time. It's because something causes that dysfunction and there's a root cause of that. So we're going to kind of talk about how those all connect tonight and why it's important to understand that there's a reason for the dysfunction in our bodies. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and have you guys turn to the second page after all the sugars, different words are listed. Go ahead and turn to that sugar quiz. Alright, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, since Facebook is watching as well, I'm going to go out loud through this sugar quiz with you guys, and then go ahead and hit true or false if they apply to you in a true way or a false way. So the first question is, I do not eat refined sugar every day. So you can hit true or false, whatever pertains to you. And we can define refined sugar as anything that's not like natural, like a fruit sugar or something like that, anything that's added. Then I can go for more than a day without eating some type of sugar-containing food. So that one would include fruit because that is a sugar-containing food. I never have cravings for sugar, coffee, chocolate, peanut butter, or alcohol. I've never hidden candy or other sweets around my home in order to find and eat them later. That means even if you're hiding them from your spouse because you think that they'll eat them as well. I can stop eating one piece of candy after one piece of candy or one bite of a pastry. There are times when I have no sugar of any kind in my home. I can go for 3 or more hours without eating and not experience shakes, fatigue, perspiration, irritability, depression, or anxiety. That would be kind of that hangry feeling we talk about. Then you can have candy and other sweets in your home and not feel tempted or eat them. You do not want to eat something sweet after each meal. You rarely drink coffee and eat donuts or sweet rolls for breakfast. You can go for more than an hour after waking up in the morning without eating. And the last one, I can go for one day to the next without drinking a sweetened soft drink. All right. So the bottom kind of goes over the results of what you filled out. So if you answered false to more than 4 of the statements, the chances are you're probably sugar sensitive or sugar addicted, you could call it. And you're probably allergic to sugar and also addicted to it. It's the same way kind of like an alcoholic's addicted to alcohol. We just don't put as much of a bad vibe around the sugar as we do with alcoholism. So those are kind of, it's nice to do this quiz because it can be kind of a realization of where you stand, at least in your journey with sugar. And then on the back, we have 146 reasons why sugar is ruining your health. So those are important. I'm not going to read them each individually now, but it's good to take home and kind of go over and breeze through. If you want to read a few each day, that's really important to understand why it actually is detrimental to your health, which we're going to go over some of them tonight. But there's definitely plenty of reasons why you shouldn't have added sugar. All right. Did anyone find out they were sugar addicts via the quiz, or did they already know? Yes. It's okay. I did too. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and do a little demo of what we do here for those of you that don't know. So I'm going to have my assistant Marissa come on up. I'm going to move right here in front of this board so we're on camera. So what we do here is called nutrition response testing, and it's done via muscle testing. So what we do when we're in the rooms with you, we push on your arm, and I'm going to have her put her arm out. So right now, Marissa up here isn't under any stress because you all are a lovely audience. And so I'm going to push on her arm, and it should be nice and strong. So that's good. She should be able to hold her arm up with as light of a push as I'm pushing on it. Then let's say she's eating sugar and she's having bad side effects. Let's say her thyroid's kind of gone a little bit wonky from the sugar she's been eating, which is a common thing that happens. So I'm going to come in here and touch her thyroid, and if it's weak or doesn't have good energy, what will happen is her arm will go weak. So that's just letting me know that the thyroid needs attention and that I'm going to figure out what is actually causing the deficit in the thyroid. So it doesn't necessarily have to be sugar. We're just focusing on that tonight because that's the topic. But it could be a range of anything from any type of food sensitivity to chemicals, metal toxicities, immune challenges, and even scars on our body can disrupt our organs and areas and cause kind of wreak havoc on the body. So let's say I found that it was sugar that was disrupting her thyroid. What I can do is I'll take this supplement. It's called Multizyme. It's a very common one for any type of digestion food issue. And I give it to her, and I put her in this hand, and then I test her thyroid. And if this supplement, Multizyme, is going to handle the problem, then her thyroid will now test strong. So that's what we want. We want it to be nice and strong. That means it's going to strengthen up the thyroid. So if it was something that wasn't specifically for that issue for her, if I put that in her hand and then touched her thyroid and it wasn't what she needed, her arm would go weak. Because even though what's in this bottle is good concentrated nutrition, it's not necessarily what her body needs. So everything that we do here at Thrive is catered to individuality. So you wouldn't take the same supplements as Carly, and so vice versa. So you're always individual in your supplement program. So I'm gonna do, we'll do this first, kind of show how our energies communicate. So it's not all witchy woo woo, I promise. Not pushing on people's arms and doing all that. There's actually science and quantum physics that are behind the muscle testing. So all of our bodies have energy or electricity. It's just like the way that, everything around us has energy, electricity. The sun, you can feel the sun through a glass window, even though the glass is in the way, you still feel its energy or electricity. So that's how the supplements can kind of penetrate through the glass container that they're in. If we did something more like if black plastic was covering a supplement, we put it on a body, it may not read it because the black color and the plastic in the way. But the glass is an ideal barrier between the supplements and the body. So the way our electricities kind of communicate, we're going to use this little tube here to demonstrate that. So I'm going to have her go ahead and put that hand up flat like that. And then I'm going to have her take this hand and squeeze the end of that tube like that. Perfect. And then I'm going to squeeze this end. And then when I touch my finger to her palm, that little guy lights up. Because I'm communicating with her body with our electricities. So that's what happens when I touch her organs and areas, and I can find out which ones are strong and which ones are weak because I'm actually using electricity from my body to hers to figure out what is the issue and what's going on. So it's pretty fun little science, little project over here. Now we'll get to a really good one. So Multizyme is really good nutritional supplement for any type of digestive problem you might be having. And if you're over consuming sugar, you probably are experiencing some type of digestive issue. So I'm gonna give this to you here. So with her, that in her hand, her arm is nice and strong. So that's something that would be okay for her to have. As soon as I take my handy dandy bag of sugar and I'll have you hold it up to your body. Yep, perfect. And then I push on her arm. Even with the nutritional supplements in her hand, she cannot hold her hand up. And I just had my male coworker do this, and he tried to outfight me, and it did not work. So I could even open up this bag, and because I know you're thinking, well, yeah, it's a whole whatever pound bag of sugar. I can actually open up this bag, and I'll take a little pinch here, and I'll have you put that in your hand with the supplement, just a little pinch there, and then I'll have her stick her arm out, and what happens though is her arm still goes weak, because this is kind of just a nice physical picture of the fact that even though we're giving the body good nutrients and good supplementation, the sugar still depletes those nutrients and kind of shocks them. So you're taking this time and effort into eating healthy and taking your supplements and whatnot, and what can happen is the sugar just kind of zaps those nutrients right out of you. You can toss that in there. All right, thank you, Marissa. All right, so now that that demo is over, we'll get into the educational part here. So first, we kind of talked about that sugar just depletes nutrients in general from the body. So sugar is one of the most addictive substances on the planet, if not the most addictive. We just don't see it that way because that's kind of how we were raised, and I was as well. I always had, dessert after dinner, and you kind of accompanied everything with some juice or whatnot when you're a kid. But it is definitely addictive, and the reason it is addictive is because actually when you eat sugar, it kind of stimulates the happy area in your brain, and releases those happy chemicals that make you feel good and kind of give you that sugar high, they call it. When a kid has a cookie and they're running around like crazy, just so happy, and then all of a sudden, boom, they drop. So that happens to us. We just have a little bit more control over our emotions and our state than children do. So we don't express that huge drop in our blood sugar as much as they do. But it does happen. And kind of like I said, how, we grow up eating a certain way and whatnot. So I understand, birthdays and happy times are all associated with sugary foods and whatnot, and going out with family and doing this and that. So I know that's also a barrier within kind of breaking the sugar habit. So we are definitely considerate to that, but we give you some good alternatives to actually kind of swap those things out and help fix that as well. All right, so what I was saying earlier is how it can shift your blood sugar drastically. So you're gonna eat sugar, consume it, your blood sugar is gonna rise immediately, and your pancreas is gonna be working overtime, kind of dumping insulin into your body to try to use up that sugar that you're consuming. And then what can happen is your sugar will go to really high to really low. So that's when we get adverse things like irritability. You're going to be craving it again. Your body's going to be like, well, I want more of what took me up here. I don't want to be down here anymore. So it's going to be craving. So you're kind of feeding the monster by doing that. Like, we're trying to get rid of those cravings, but then the thing you want is what's actually hurting you. So you're going to get that high, that low. So that high and low can be also associated with things like anxiety and depression. So, anxiety can be like an overstimulated high, like, so much on your mind, very worrisome, kind of high alert. And depression is obviously a low point. So it's also associated with mental health illnesses and things like that. Then next we have just causing mood swings. So the irritability that comes with the sugar intake. Again, you're going to get that super high, then you're going to get low, and you're going to be very, very, what we call kind of like hangry. And hangry is like, the new thing to be like, oh, I'm hangry, that's why I'm yelling at you. Like, no, that's not okay. So let's not do that. Let's kind of prevent that stage of that hangry feeling. And we can definitely do that. We just kind of got to help kick that sugar habit. Then next we have excess sugar can be stored as fat. So excess anything that you eat is going to be stored as fat, but sugar is extra detrimental because the fact that it's storing itself as like a glucose form versus, you know, if you stored some high quality fat for energy to use later, it's going to be a different type of energy. So kind of what you put in is what you get out. So if you eat a donut, I wouldn't expect to have good energy from it a few hours later. But if you eat an avocado and you have that stored fat and that stored energy, you're going to have those really good essential fatty acids to have long sustaining energy throughout your day. So there are two different types of energy. So that's kind of one of the biggest things we hear is, oh, well, you know, I hear carbs give me energy and whatnot. Yes, they do, but is it the type of energy you actually want long term? And what are the actual effects of it long term, eating sugar like that? All right. Then next we have, which a lot of people associate with sugar, is diabetes. So that's a huge problem in America, and especially it's becoming a problem in youth even. We're seeing more and more obesity with young children, and we're seeing more and more type 2 diabetes, which is technically adult onset diabetes, but they're calling it type 2 now because so many younger people are getting diabetes at a young age, so it's not really adult onset anymore. And type 2 diabetes can be completely prevented through proper nutrition and dietary lifestyle. It's not like type 1 where it was onset, but we can also help drastically change type 1 diabetes here at Thrive. We've seen many cases like that. So then when you're also eating sugar, you can experience times when your energy hits rock bottom. So you may have that quick up, but overall, long term, your energy is not going to be sustainable. And also you're going to have more lows than you will kind of higher days. And then a huge thing that's affected by that is your sleep. So when you're eating sugar, you're probably not sleeping optimally. Personally, when I was eating sugar on sugar, however you want to call it, I was experiencing night sweats, waking up like every few hours just because I couldn't get restful sleep. And that happens with many patients here. They're like, oh, like last night I didn't sleep as well as I normally do. And I'm like, okay, Donna, you ate blah, blah, blah last night. Kind of put the pieces together and you can have the realization, okay, that's what that caused. So what happens is you start to put pieces together of what sugar is actually doing to you once you start to confront it. And then again, when you're getting poor sleep, your energy is going to be lacking, so you kind of take another hit at your energy. And then a little fun but scary fact is when you eat sugar, the brain actually slightly swells. So the brain doesn't like sugar at all because it's made of fat and water. So again, sugar is depleting of nutrients, and our brain needs plenty of nutrients to function throughout the day. And that can result in headaches, tension headaches, migraines, all of that. Long-term migraines can be from a sugar overload diet. So it's like, oh, well, I've eaten sugar all my life and I'm now 32 and I'm getting migraines. And it's kind of like, you can use the example of the cup. So if you have a cup and that's your body and you keep pouring into it bad things, eventually bad things are going to overflow. So symptoms are sometimes leading up anywhere from 10 to 20 years before they actually arrive. And that's why we can't rely on a quick fix, or especially around here, we focus on the actual root of the problem and long-term health care, and not a quick fix like a prescription drug or whatnot that could actually be more harmful than it is helpful in the long run. All right, and then, like I said, it just disrupts your sleep pattern. So we've seen many people. I have a patient who actually was sleeping only about like every hour she'd wake up, and we have worked on reducing her sugar amount tremendously to about only a treat a week we're at, and she sleeps straight for 5 to 6 hours now, and that wasn't something that happened before. So in turn, she has better energy, and now when she does kind of have her sweet treat, it's like her body is responding in a positive way because it's actually, she wants less of that. So that will happen as well. I know it's like in your head, it's like, oh, but I need sugar, it's what I want, it's what I crave. Eventually you get to the point where you actually start craving better foods once you get sugar out of your diet. So when I started getting sugar out of my diet, coming here to Thrive, what happened was I didn't really like only but a few vegetables, and now I love things like Brussels sprouts and cauliflower and all of that kinds of stuff that Before I would have been like, I'm not eating that. So now having the sugar out has helped a lot. That craving for sugar has gone away, and the craving for good nutrient dense food has gone up. All right, so we kind of have dragged on sugar and focused on why we shouldn't have it and why it's bad for our bodies. So let's kind of focus on how we actually can avoid that. So first, don't focus on what you can't have. So that can drive a person a little bit crazy if you're like, oh, I can't have that, and it's a negative association with food, which is not what we want. So what the thing is that we want to do is kind of turn that mindset around, and we want to have a positive association with food, and we even want to have a positive association with sugar, because we want to make that connection that, okay, it is something that makes me feel bad, and that's not a negative connection necessarily. That can be a positive thing, because that's you knowing what's best for your health. So what it is about perspective as well. And that kind of comes down to the part where I talked about being with family and doing family things. You know, we associate that with good times, birthdays and cake and ice creams and stuff. Well, that's all great, but if you're going to change your lifestyle, maybe, you know, you can still have cake, but look for a better alternative. There are so many options out there nowadays that the options are endless to what it comes with almond flours and coconut flours, and you can make a ton of different things with very healthy ingredients and still get that little, you know, cake fix or cupcakes and all of that. So you kind of have to change your perspective and don't have restraint against sugar. Have more positive outlook on why you know you shouldn't eat it. And you can start with a single meal a day. So I would never recommend cutting sugar out cold turkey. Number one, you're going to be very, very irritable. Your signs and symptoms of coming off sugar are going to be increased. So you may experience things like irritability. You may get headaches. You may experience indigestion, because your body has gone from one fuel source to the next like that. And that's not ideal for the body either, as well it is for you mentally. So you might experience very high up and downs during that time. So we always like to do things in gradients. So what I would do is do things like each meal, work on something. So like for a couple weeks, you could say, okay, so I'm going to focus on breakfast, and I'm going to eat foods like eggs and bacon and sausage, instead of things like cereals or yogurts that are probably high in sugar because they have added fruit to them and whatnot. And dairy does naturally have a little bit of sugar in it too. So if you're really kind of getting a little more nitpicky on it, that could be something to look at as well. So I know also our coffees are huge. So people are going to Starbucks and getting this coffee that has like 40 grams of sugar in it, which is a lot of sugar. So we want to also avoid those as well. And then we have things like at breakfast, you know, especially what we're feeding kids too is really detrimental to them. So when we start kids out earlier on sugar, it becomes more and more difficult for them to actually get off of sugar and eat real foods like fruits and vegetables. So they'll be craving things like Pop-Tarts and cookies and cereals, which is not supplying any type of nutrition to them at all. And at that stage, when they're growing and they're young, it's very, very vital for them to get good nutrition and proper nutrients in their body so that they develop correctly. And then next we also have things like that I see kind of mistaken for healthy, because that's just the way that they've been marketed and advertised, are things like oatmeal. So oatmeal can be good if number one, oatmeal is kind of hard to digest. So ideally oats are soaked overnight before they're actually eaten. And then second, oatmeals like the instant ones, or sometimes even the non-instant, contain things like added sugar. If it's like the maple cinnamon flavor or the apples or something like that, it's not always natural sugar that is added in those, and more than times it's just not. Especially Quaker, they put whatever they can in for it to taste good. All right, and then next we have things like, you know, muffins and pastries and stuff. Breakfast is like, I feel like the biggest defender of sweet things, but you want to avoid those things, and you want to start your day off with high quality fats and proteins, and then that way you're actually fueling your body and you're setting yourself up for success. So we don't want to set ourselves up for failure first thing in the morning, and we can do that by consuming sugar. The most consumed sugar item in America is actually pops and Cokes and all that type of stuff, sodas. So that's a huge problem because first of all, it's high fructose corn syrup that's sweetening the pop and the sodas. So that's sugar, and also along with that, it's coming from a corn source, which is probably genetically modified organism or GMO corn source. So GMOs are really bad for our gut in particular because they contain man-made bacteria basically, and can disturb our natural bacteria in our gut. So along with sugar disturbing the gut in itself, it also is going to contain high fructose corn syrup, which disturbs the gut even further. So anything with high fructose corn syrup in it, that's sugar and corn and GMO. So an even further reason to avoid that product in the first place. It's probably highly processed and is not good for your body. So then with lunch, one of the biggest things that I've seen too, especially is salad dressings. So if you're not like making your own dressing or you're not looking at it before you buy it, I would start doing that. So salad dressings are a huge target for added sugars because you're adding it to your nice healthy salad and then you just drizzle like 20 grams of sugar on it. It kind of defeats the purpose of the salad. So they do make really good salad dressings nowadays that are a good alternative for the ones you were eating. Primal Kitchen is a really good brand, and they have anywhere from like a healthy Thousand Island to a healthy Greek or Caesar dressing, and they actually even have like barbecue sauces and whatnot that don't contain any added sugars, which is really beneficial for if you're trying to start eating healthy and you're eating a nice salad. You want that to actually be beneficial to your body. And then sandwiches. So we talk about kind of just refined sugar in general, but at the end of the day, what we can consider sugar too is breads and whatnot. So especially a lot of white breads today, like hillbilly bread. I don't even know if that's bread. So that contains high fructose corn syrup in it. I mean, I only know that 'cause that's what I grew up on. So that was the go-to, or I think this other one like Aunt Millie's or something like that. Those are all very, very processed breads, and you could like put a little water on them and they would go up into a gross gooey ball because I don't think they're real food. But breads are really important to stay away from. And if you are going to have some type of bread, you would probably want to opt for more of like a sprouted grain, or you can find gluten-free breads, but that's another thing I'll touch on because the marketing industry especially is starting to catch on that more and more people are starting to care for their health. So that's awesome that they kind of are observing that, but it's also detrimental because they kind of can like post some faux things out there. So everyone is gluten-free, so that's good because gluten in America is especially not good for our health. But the thing is that just because it says gluten-free and it's labeled gluten-free does not mean it's okay for you. So what they do is they take the gluten out, but then they put a bunch of sugar in it. Yeah, it's horrible. So what they do is they kind of just fake you out and make you think that that's an okay product to eat. They especially target the children's market. I mean, kids, like they're watching TV, they say, oh, like that looks good, I want that, or you're going through the store and they put cool pictures on it and all of that. They're targeting children to craving the sugar because then they're lifelong customers, because if you get them addicted when they're this little, then they'll probably be addicted their whole lives. So that's something to also monitor as well. I just encourage you to read labels as much as you can, and that's why I kind of included that first sheet in with the clipboard, because that has the list of 56 different ways that sugar can hide in labels or on food. There's a couple on there that I'll point out: honey and maple syrup. So those are more so better sugar alternatives, but they are still on the list because they are still sugar. So that's still a way that food can have sugar in it as well. But there's tons of different ways, and I read an article maybe a couple weeks ago that they're going to start being able to list high fructose corn syrup as natural sweetener. So that's very disappointing, and not okay. So people should be aware of that, and be looking out for that as well. And especially if it's the first ingredient. So if it's like sugar, first ingredient, then that's what it contains the most of. So ideally we want to stray away from that for sure. And then any type of so when you get that, when you're addicted to sugar, most of us probably are affected by that after you eat feeling, then you want something sweet. So that can come from many things. It can come from our body just is depleted of the nutrients that are needed to keep us satiated and full. And then also it can come from like a habit standpoint. So that's something we work on here at Thrive. So we work on kind of pinpointing exactly where the sugar is coming from in your diet, because you may not even realize it. Some people are so sensitive to sugar that fruit can even be an issue for them. So it depends on your tolerance with sugar. And we do have specific things here that we can test to determine that or not. And then also we can determine in your diet, okay, if you're starting out your morning with oatmeal and a banana, then you're kind of already depleting yourself of good nutrients, and then you're going to have stronger cravings throughout your day. You're going to experience higher fatigue throughout your day because you're not starting off your day with an adequate amount of protein and fat. And then also along with that, we have at the end of the day is where we see most patients having that urge and that craving for, man, I just really want just one piece of pie. That's all I want. There's fruit in it. No, that's what my mom told me growing up. There's fruit in it. I'm like, okay, all right. So we want that little slice of something at the end of the day. And again, that's because we just ultimately don't set ourselves up for success at the beginning of the day, giving ourselves nutrient-rich foods like things high quality fat and protein and good vegetables that are full of good vitamins and minerals. All right, so you're probably wondering, again, what gradient should I go at? So first, like I said, don't cut it out completely because it's very important that you go on a slow scale that is best for you. So, each individual is different. It doesn't mean like if I can cut sugar out in 3 weeks that the next person can cut it out in 2, or they take 6 months or something like that. Everyone's different. So don't ever compare yourself to anyone else, especially, and then take it one day at a time. So, if you're doing great and then you have a slip up, don't look back on that as a bad thing. We're human, we make mistakes, and if you concentrate on that mistake, all you're gonna do is kind of use that and manifest more mistakes because you're so focused on what you did that was a mess up. And you can find support, so it's much easier to be like on a team with somebody if you have support and they're coming off sugar too. Because if you come home and your husband just bought a fresh pack of Oreos and you're trying to get off sugar, well, those Oreos might be pretty tempting. So the key is going to be to get those out of the house, get husband on board with getting off sugar, and actually he'll feel a ton better too. So all the husbands out there, they're slow, but they come eventually. Sorry, men. All right. So next, you want to make sure that you're prepared for the adverse side effects that may happen even if you are quitting sugar slowly. So you may still experience things like a change in fatigue and some headaches and things like that. You may have some sort of, you could call it like adverse reaction when you're coming off of sugar because your body is making changes. So I don't want you to come back in here and be like, Emily, you told me to quit sugar and I feel worse. Well, that may happen because your body is making changes, and when it's going from relying on sugar as your main source of energy, and then you switch and give it a little bit of better energy, your body has to change systems and learn how to use that good fuel as energy instead of the sugary source that it was using. So for example, we have a patient here who, Coke and pop products are a really big issue nowadays, and I understand why. They're very addicting. It's just like if you were, most people are addicted to coffee, so it's not anything to feel bad about, but what we do is we go so slow on a gradient that it's like, okay, if you're drinking 32 ounces of pop a day, we're gonna go down to 30 this week. So it's not anything steep, and I wouldn't recommend doing anything steep. It's all about what you can handle personally. All right, and then we'll talk about how to actually aid the cravings when you're coming off of sugar. So there's quite a few things you can do to help with those cravings. And first of all, we talked about the main one is going to be your mindset is going to be huge. So you want to have a good perspective on the task that you have at hand. You want to make sure that you're not associating sugar as a bad negative thing, even though it does have detrimental effects and you can recognize that, but I wouldn't demonize it at all or anything like that. And then you want to make sure you're keeping your meals diverse. So you want to still have flavor in your food because we want to be satisfied. So add different types of spices, cook on the grill, cook in the oven, cook on the stovetop. Especially now in summertime, it's amazing. You can go cook a really great meal out on the grill. So you want to make sure you still have variety in foods. And then you want to be replacing your sugar. So if you're going to be cutting out a part of your diet that once was your calories were given by sugar, you want to make sure you're replacing them with high quality fats and proteins. And those are things like, so we'll talk about proteins. We want good sources of meat, so that could be grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, well-raised pork. So you want all of those things to be added into your diet. Eggs are really, really good for the body. And those need to be pasture raised, ideally, because they're going to be eating mostly the bugs that are out in the grass instead of grain feed. And then also you want to focus on maybe even something like lamb is really great. So lamb's a really good source of protein and a good source of fat. And when you're getting your beef, ideally you should get 80% lean, 20% fat, and that cooks up really well, especially because the fat gives it a nice it produces more moisture within the meat, and you don't really have to add much water or anything to it. It just kind of makes itself that way. And then fat-wise, we want to make sure we're getting avocados are really great. So those are packed with tons of good nutrients and good fat. Nuts and seeds are good, depending on if you're tolerant to them. They can be a good snack. And what you can do to add a little bit of something sweet, because what will be important too is replacing those sweet treats with something that you like, because it's important to enjoy the food that you're eating. I would never want someone to force themselves to eat anything, because that's also giving yourself a bad association with food when food is there to help us heal and survive. So you want to replace things like you could do like a homemade trail mix. So you could do your favorite nuts. You could do like a handful of dried fruit is okay, as long as you're not overdoing it. And then things like coconut flakes, or you could do like a little bit of maple syrup on it to kind of make it more stick together more so. But again, you just don't want to overdo that. All right. And then you want to make sure you stay hydrated. So that's really important. Staying hydrated can keep our hunger at a lower level than it normally would be if you were dehydrated, because our brain can associate hunger and dehydration as the same thing. So you may think, oh my gosh, I'm starving, when really you haven't drank since 8 a.m. and you're probably just very thirsty. And along with that comes salt intake. So I know that there's a bad rep around salt intake, but salt's actually very important for your body to absorb water and nutrients. And when I say salt, I mean high quality salt like Celtic sea salt or pink Himalayan salt. Those are really great options, and you can actually put that directly in your water if you wanted to add some electrolytes to the water. Or we have a specific electrolyte powder here too that's good. It has like a lemon flavor to it. But that's really important to stay on track with getting off sugar. Then you also want to make sure you're planning ahead. So when do we reach for bad food? When it's most convenient. You've had a crazy busy day. The easiest thing to do is drive through McDonald's and get dinner for you and the kids. not the best choice, but you understand why you did it because you just weren't prepared for that at all. So what can happen is we can do things like start to meal prep, and you could do prep things in advance. So you could do stuff like hard-boiled eggs as really good healthy snacks for the week. You could prep meals and actually put them in containers and just have them in your fridge to warm up. I promise you that even though your schedule seems so busy, taking an hour or barely even 2 to prep like 6 to 10 good meals for the week is very, very beneficial in the long run. So you're taking that hour on your Sunday evening, but you're adding many, many healthy years to your life. So you just kind of have to look at it in that perspective. In the long term, you're going to benefit tremendously. And like I said, if you eat sugar, do not dwell on it. So if you fail, ultimately we all fail at something, right? So whatever your goal is, don't dwell on the fact that, oh man, I had like a half of a Snickers bar, even though I haven't had sugar for 10 days. Okay, so that doesn't take away from the 10 days that you didn't have sugar. That's awesome, and 10 days is an amazing length of time, and you shouldn't be mad at yourself for having a little bit if you accidentally slip up. And eventually you get to the point where it's like, so it took me about 6 months. I started my program here in September, and it took me about until February-ish to finally, like, for it to click that, oh my gosh, sugar makes me feel like crap, I probably should stop eating it. And it wasn't like I was eating sugar a lot and then it went down, and then I would eat it and I'd feel a little crappy, and then it went down again and I'd eat less. And each time I came back to it, I would feel worse and worse because my body became more sensitive to sugar, and I was less addicted to it in return. So what can happen is you'll start to have connections with how bad you feel, and you don't want to feel that way again. You know, you have things that you have to do every day, and you have to get through your lives. You have kids, you have grandkids, you have your work, you have your job, you have things that are stressful in your life. So eating sugar and adding to that stress doesn't help our bodies in the long run, or even in the short term. It can cause a lot of frustration. And then if you're taking whole food supplements and replacing the nutrients you're lacking, that's very important too, because naturally sugar does deplete nutrients. But even just living out in the world we do today, we kind of talked about the 5 different reasons why we could have a nutritional deficiency, is because, you know, there's chemicals in our air. There's metals we're eating from pesticides that are put on the crops, and then in turn they go into the air and even go on our organic produce and whatnot. So at some level we all are experiencing some sort of toxicity in our bodies. And what we can do is we can give the whole food supplements it needs to actually help the body do its job correctly, so it's under less stress. All right, and then again, I kind of already talked about this, but make sure you're reading food labels. So on food labels too, on the actual part where it kind of talks about the grams and the percentages, they'll go over a part where it can say, so it'll say sugars, and it'll say like added sugars as well. And that could be like, so if it's like, okay, 10 grams of sugar and then 10 grams of added sugar, what can happen is you obviously would know then that's not a natural source. So that's really helpful to have. But if it just says 10 grams of sugar, then I would go look at the actual ingredients to check out where that sugar is coming from. Is it a natural source like a fruit, or is it something more artificial like sucralose or dextrose or something like that? So there's just so many names for sugar, and like 5 of them are all derived from corn, which is like, why not just have one name? but they want to stump us. So it's very important to start reading the labels. And then last but not least is just enjoy the food you do eat. So it's really important to just sit and enjoy your meal, and be happy about what it does for your body. So food is meant to fuel us, and especially if we eat whole foods that are nutrient dense, that's going to be the most beneficial over everything. So we want to eat foods that are in their form that they came from. So like vegetables, fruits, meats obviously are slightly processed, but that's for a reason. But we want to eat foods that are the way that they came out of the dirt. So that's very important too. All right. Well, that's all I have for you guys. Bye, Facebook. You're good to turn that off.